afterwards,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay. Perfect.
Is the lighting good? You got everything you need?
Yeah, I've had them set the lighting. It's the best we can get it.
Get a little closer, probably.
Ah, there. Dr. Demartini, first of all, I want to thank you, my deepest, humblest gratitude for being here today.
Thank you.
I really took a leap of faith and took a chance and got the opportunity.
Well, thank you for asking, and it's great. We'll help some more people this way.
Thank you. The reason why I requested this interview is because I am intent on helping the lower income levels build themselves up, and those that's been previously misused and abused build themselves up to get them in the right mindset of obtaining their own financial freedom.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a worthy cause.
I hope so. So in your talk on the evening of the June of the 5th, you gave us 12 points on how to live a fulfilling life. But how do we start finding our true, authentic nature? If you go and look at your online questionnaires like the DISC profile, the Personality Plus, the Genius You, all of those, in my humble opinion, are based on nurturing instead of nature. Where do we start finding our true nature?
Great question. Some of those profiles are Jungian quadrant-based systems that are a little bit typical, not trait-oriented, which means that they tend to put people into kind of a category of one of four categories, that type of thing. I'm a little leery of those because in different settings, people act out different roles and play out different ways. We're introverted at times, we're extroverted at times, depending on the situation. So categorizing ourselves that way really needs to be context specific. And I think they can mislead and they can be interpreted unwisely if it's not put into proper context. What I have attempted to do, not that that doesn't have value, it's just that it's not, people get stuck in the box. I believe that that each individual sees life, filtering life through what they value most. And what I've done is I've created an objective evaluation as best I can. There's no way to get perfect objective, but the best I can to help a person identify what they really, really find important in their life. Now, Kohlberg, the psychologist, said that in stages of moral development, there's avoid pain, seek pleasure, and then there's subordination to mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, which is individual authorities. Then there's subordination to collective authorities, peer pressures, at different levels of the dynamic of society. And we can get caught in tradition and, convention and mores and things. And we can lose ourself in that, trying to fit in and try to be socialized and be part of something, and lose who we really are, and kind of repress that. Freud called it the superego, the injunctions of and injected values of outer authorities running our life and causing internal conflicts, and in some cases moral development, moral paradoxes. So I try to get past those things and try to get in and look at what their life demonstrates, because whatever we value is impacting how we perceive, decide, and act. And I've tried to go a little bit farther than that, because if I just ask somebody what you value most, what's most important in your life, they'll tell you social idealisms, truth, honesty, integrity, and all this kind of stuff that sounds neat. But when I get down into what their life really demonstrates, it's different. So I look at what they fill their space with. Even a baby will put things around its space and keep things around itself and push things away from it that it likes and dislikes. Before it's been a lot of socialization. Then I look at how people fill their space, and things that are really valuable to you keep close to you, and things that aren't you push away. If I gave you something that had zero value, you put it in the trash. You wouldn't let me know it, but you put it in the trash. If you thought maybe I could give it to a friend, it might help somebody or help me later in life, you might store it. But you won't keep it around you. You'll just put it in the garage or attic or closet or something. So how you fill your space has a lot to do with what you really value. And what you value has a lot to do with what you're going to make decisions about. Because things that support that value you're going to do, and things that go against it you're going to be avoiding. I then look at how much time you spend on it. Things that are really valuable, you make time, spend time, and find time for. And things you don't have time for and don't want to make time for is lower on the value list. So I look at how you spend your time. Look objectively at your day, consistently through a month or longer period. What are you spending your time on? What's really truthfully there? My case, it's teaching and research. That's my love. But you got to look at what's really there. Your life demonstrates your values. And if you look at it objectively, it'll reveal things to you. But if you ask subjective questions, they'll tell you things. And if you try to put people in boxes according to social structures, you'll get probably a distorted view. So I look at how they spend their time. I look at how they fill their space. Then I look at what energizes them. Things that are high in their value, their energy goes up. Things that are low in their values, energy goes down. So I look at what energizes them and what engages them. When people go to work, if they feel that they're getting their values met, they're engaged and they work hard and they're productive. If they don't, they want to take a break, they want to escape, they want to take time off, they want bonuses, they want things because they're not engaged. So I look at what is it that you're engaged in and energized by. The fourth one is, what do you spend your money on? When you get money, things that are valuable to you, spend money on. Things that aren't valuable to you, you'll say, I don't want to pay, I don't want to blow it there. So I look at if you look at your checkbook consistently, month by month, it's telling you what you value. Maybe a house, maybe transport, maybe education, maybe your kids. That tells you factually what you're spending your money on. And people say, well, I have to do it. It's, I got to go to work. Well, there's some women out there and men out there that delegate that to a spouse. And the spouse goes to work and they take care of the kids. So the real truth is you wouldn't be doing what you're doing and going to work if you didn't feel that you wanted a bit of autonomy, you want to make your own money, didn't want to rely on somebody. Your values are creating that reality. So I look at those. And then I look at where they're most organized and ordered. So there's things that are really, really important to you, you organize. I was on a plane flying in first class, I think Australia, and there was a lovely 11-year-old girl sitting with rubber horses on her tray on the front row. And her father was sitting next to her, and they had all the horses arranged in size. And I stood there. I was about to go to the restroom. I was just standing there, and I finally spoke up. I said, "You love horses, huh?" She goes, "I do." And I said, I asked, "Do you mind if I ask you some questions?" And I went through the value determination process with her. Every one of them were horses. Everything was horses. She filled her space with horses. She spent her time with horses. What energizes being with horses and studying horses. When she had money, she bought things with the horses. She even had a horse. Where she was most organized, they were showing up on her house and her room everything was horse and all organized. I then look at what are you most spontaneously disciplined to do that nobody has to remind you to do, because that tells you what you value. When you're inspired from within and you're intrinsically driven, an intrinsic value, that's not an external value. That's something you can't wait to get up and do spontaneously. Not because you should, not because of duty, not because of ought to, supposed to's, not imperatives, not injunctions, but just spontaneous actions. So I look at what that is and look at what you spontaneously do. Then I look at what you internally think about most, about how you want your life that shows evidence coming true. I look at what you visualize most about how you want your life that shows evidence coming true. If there's no evidence, it can't be the answer. So if you think about, I want to travel the world, but you're not traveling, you don't put it. But if you're thinking about, I want to travel the world, and you're traveling, then there's a congruency there. Then I look at what you internally say to yourself in an internal dialogue, not the negative self-talk, but the talk that is actually coming true in your life about how you want your life. Then I look at when you're in social conversations, what do you keep wanting to bring the conversation to? What do you want to talk about most? That tells me a lot about what you value. Some people come up to you and said, how's your kids? Or how's your business? Or how's your golf game? They always want to bring the conversation into something they can engage them. So what do you converse about? What do you want to talk about? And if you get to talk about it, you'll talk all night about it. Then I look at what inspires you the most. What brings tears of inspiration when you're doing it or thinking about it? And what's common to the people that have inspired you in your life? And there's a pattern there. And these things are all repeated patterns. These answers will be the same answers repeated back. Sometimes there's all 13 answers are the same on some of those answers. So I look at what inspires you and what's common to people inspire you. Then I look at what are the 3 most consistent, persistent goals you have about how you want your life that shows evidence coming true. Not things that are fantasies, but things that are coming true. So I said that I want to travel the world and I want to teach. I want to research the law of the universe. That's all come true. I also had a little fantasy. I said, I want to be an international sex symbol. That's never come true. That was no signs of that. But those are fantasies. And people, when they set fantasies, they beat themselves up because there's no reality to it. But the ones that are coming true are affirmative. And then the last one is, what is the thing you can't wait to study, learn about, read about, listen to about, view on YouTube? What are you engaged and want to learn? Because the thing you want to learn about most is what's valuable. So if I go and answer 3 answers for each of those 13 questions, which I call the value determinants, and list those, the same answers will show up. And I go and and there'll be synonyms or the same answers. And you'll find out that the ones that show up most is the first highest value, the second most common, second value, third most common. And most people, if they do that questionnaire, and it's on my website, will have usually 3 to 5 values summarized. And the one at the top is the highest value. That's the thing that they're most committed to. Their life revolves around, their identity revolves around it. It's what they're committed to. And if you're dedicated to being raising family and you're a mother, it'll show up mother. If your highest entrepreneurship is what your goal is, it'll show up entrepreneur. If it's social causes, it'll show up there. It'll be pretty accurate. I mean, I've asked thousands of people over 40 years this, and it nails it. So it gives some higher objective view, and it's only as valuable as the person doing it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm there with them, I'll make sure they're accountable. But sometimes I want to write down what it should be or ought to be, and then they don't have a certainty at the end. So you want to make sure that it's an objective, real observation, what their life demonstrates. And that gives you a pretty good indication of what they're committed to. And if they build their life around that and structure their life and delegating other things that are lower in priority to others and get on with highest priorities, their self-worth goes up, their achievements go up, their accomplishments go up. And if they apply the formula that I mentioned the other night, according to that, they'll excel.
Oh, wonderful. I have not had the honor to attend the Breakthrough System process or the Prophecy One experience SP yet. But could you explain to us why is it for us as humans so important to confront and question our subconscious beliefs or ultimately our subconscious blocks?
Well, I'll have to develop something here. So there's different models of psychology, and I'm just going to kind of synthesize a variety of them. If you're infatuated with someone, you meet somebody and you look up to them, you're infatuated with them, you go, wow. Most men and women have had somebody they've been infatuated somewhere in their life. What they're doing, they're perceiving somebody that's supporting their values more than challenging it. They're looking up to them more than down. They're infatuated, not resentful. And they're conscious of the positives and unconscious of the negatives. And they are seeing more similarities than differences. And so they're drawn to this person. But what they've done is they've divided their consciousness up into that which is supporting consciously, but they've ignored and they're ignorant of the downsides. They blocked that. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get to know the person and live with the person, you find those others out. But in the beginning, you're infatuated, you're blind. And infatuation is blind to the downsides. Conscious of the positives, unconscious of the negatives. Now, later, you may resent that person. When you're resenting that person, you're now seeing more downsides than upsides, more negatives than positives, more challenges and supports, more differences and similarities. When you're infatuated with somebody, you say, oh my God, we have the same number of eyes, same number of ribs, similarities. When you're resentful, we're going in 2 different directions, we have nothing in common, we don't want the same things. So when you see more of those, you're blind now to the upsides and you're conscious of the downsides. So again, you're dividing your consciousness up into parts you're aware of and parts you're not, conscious and unconscious. Now, any one of those perceptions, if you're infatuated with somebody, they occupy space and time in your mind and run you. When you're resentful to somebody, they occupy space and time in your mind and run you. Your mind doesn't have a freedom when you're infatuated. You can't think of them. Got to get them out of your mind. You're thinking about them. When you're resentful, you're angry, you can't get them out of your mind. If you level the playing field and have equanimity and equity, and you're no longer putting them above you or below you, and you're putting as equal reflections, your mind's cleared. There's no noise in the mind. There's no electronic imbalances. And you're now fully conscious of the person, and you love the person. I always say love is a balance of those two. Because the person you love, you're going to like and dislike. You want to hug and slug, and you want to, hug and come close to and get away from. So when you balance those, you have love, and you feel a clear mind, and you have full consciousness. Now, all of the conscious, unconscious splits of all the infatuation, resentments we have are seeking and avoidings, prey and predator, we call them. All of that is stored in the subconscious mind and doesn't allow us to escape that because it's occupying our mind. And it doesn't allow us to escape it. And it's running our physiology epigenetically and running our physiology to make sure we don't let those things go unloved and unappreciated. Because if we had only 24 hours to live, we want to say thank you, I love you to the people in our life that contribute to it. So anybody that we have infatuation, resentments to, we're not really in love with. We're having a partial view. And so our subconscious mind holds that in there, and that's running physiology, running illnesses, affecting our decisions, making us avoid and seek. Anything that's associated with those are going to make us seek or avoid. And most decisions we think are conscious are actually unconscious automaton reactions to these subconsciously stored polarities. So in the Demartini method I do in the breakthrough experience, I bring those back into balance and liberate people from that. And the noise in the brain's gone, and they can make decisions that are truly theirs. Most people are automatons reacting to all that subconscious storage, that baggage that's sitting there. And they think that they're running their life, but they're actually being run by those things in the past. So without clearing those, they can affect our health. And I'm going over that in my program today. I'm talking about all the health issues and how those things are affecting health. Literally epigenetically, how the immune system's affected by it. I'm going through all the different components. Because anything that we haven't loved runs our life until we love it. And love in this case is not a romantic love, not infatuation, but an embracing of both sides, simultaneous of a person and owning who they are. If I went up to you and I said, you're always nice, you're never mean, you're always kind, you're never cruel, you're always positive, you're never negative, you're always sweet, you're never bitter, you're always generous, you're never stingy, you're always considerate, never inconsiderate. If I said that to you, you would have a bullshit meter that would go off and go, not exactly, because it'd be one-sided. Mm-hmm. If I said you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, you're always negative, you're never positive, you're always taking, never giving, always inconsiderate, never considerate, you're always wrathful, never peaceful, your bullshit meter would go off and go, no, that's not me. But if I said to you, sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, sometimes you're giving, sometimes you're taking, you may go, yeah. So what happens is anytime we see ourselves or others in an imbalanced way, our bullshit meter goes off. We don't have a clear consciousness. We know it's lie, and it's not a truthful. It's not a love of the person. It's an infatuation, resentment. It's a lopsided perception. And those create lopsided physiology and lopsided relationship dynamics and decision-making process. And it's called subjective biases. And those subjective biases go all the way to black and white, always mean, never nice, all the way, or go back to the balance and say, sometimes I'm nice, sometimes I'm mean. Mm-hmm. And that's healthy. The other ones are unhealthy. So that creates immune responses and physiological changes. And so my job in the breakthrough experience and in prophecy program is to train people about human behavior. So they're not living in delusions about who they are and who other people are. And if they identify what their highest values are, that's where they're most spontaneously inspired. That's where they're most objective. That's where they have the most expanded view of who they could be. That's when they're actually making wiser decisions. They're more objective and more rational. And then their lower values, they're more emotional. They're wanting to avoid pain and seek pleasure. They're more subjectively biased. They're more distorting of their reality. They're more impulsive and instinctful instead of intuitive and reasonable. So if I can identify what their values are, I can keep more balance in their perspective. There's less baggage. There's less subjective storage. And there's less run by the past. And they're more foresight instead of hindsight. Foresight is planning things objectively and achieving great things. Hindsight is through trial and error. It's less efficient. And it's like an animal compared to an angelic human being. Mm-hmm. So the breakthrough experience is designed to help people identify what those are, neutralize them out, liberate their mind from the noise, get clear about what it is that they want, get objective about what's really prior to them, prioritize the things, delegate lower priority things, get on with doing something that earns an income that serves people so you can delegate, so you can be liberated and free to do what you love in life and have a self-actualized life.
Oh, fantastic. And you just spoke about planning. And that brings me to our next question. You have written every single plan idea in what I would call a series of encyclopedias. I saw it in one of your videos. You actually showed us the book. And they're like, that thick. How important is it for us to plan? I mean, you've put together the master planning system. And a lot of us haven't been taught or mentored how to do that forward planning. How important is it for us? I mean, using journals and diaries, that's not really the planning that you're talking about.
Well, there's no harm in having a journal in life. You can keep an idea of what you've done and look at your past, and you can see a journey of yourself. And there's value out of doing that from hindsight. There's value. It's not as efficient. But defining what you really, 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 really want. So I always say you need to start with what you know. When I was 17 years old, I met a teacher that taught me to plan ahead. And he said, start with what you know. So I said, okay, I knew I wanted to travel the world. That's certain. I have evidence of that. Since I was 3, I was traveling around the neighborhood. When I was 9, I was riding bicycles 35 miles. When I was 12, I was hopping trains from different cities. When I was 13, I was hitchhiking to different cities. When I was 14, I went across the world in the United States and Mexico, Central America. When I was 15, I went off to Hawaii and lived there. I've been traveling my whole life. There's no question in my mind, my life loved traveling. I live on a ship that goes around the world. I travel nonstop. I've gone nearly 19 million miles of travel. So I look at that and I go, there's evidence of that. It's not a fantasy. I love traveling. Start there. What else do I know I want? Well, I knew I wanted to overcome my learning problems. I knew I wanted to be intelligent. I knew I wanted to learn. I knew the things I wanted to learn. I started there. So it's wise to start with what you know and let what you know grow as you discover who you are. And to say what exactly you would love to do, because nobody's going to get up in the morning and dedicate their life to you. Nobody's going to get up except projecting their values onto you to try to get their life filled. So if you're surrounded by people and projecting onto you and you're trying to fit in and you're subordinating to them, you're going to be clouded and shrouded and scattered and diluted from everybody else's expectations. And you got to be able to say, what is it you want? Because if you don't, your life went by. So I had to decide what I really wanted to do. And I started writing that down. And I wrote down goals back when I was 17 years old. And I wrote down my first mission statement then. And I've read it and refined it and read it and refined it and upgraded it and read it and refined it. Occasionally I'd find out that there was no evidence showing up. So I edited it, cleaned it up until I got to know what I'm really showing my life committed to. Not my fantasies, not what I hope it would be that's unreal, but things that my life demonstrates according to what I value most that are committed to being done, that I show evidence of doing. Because if I set goals that are really true, that are not exaggerations, not minimizations, but are really authentic, I have the greatest confidence and greatest achievements in my life. So master planning is asking yourself questions to help bring out that information. It's 2,000 questions that I've accumulated over the years of helping people become clear on what that is that they really want to do in life. And they're sitting down and defining what that is. Spiritually, how do they want to live their life? Intellectually, what do they want to learn and how do they want to use their mind? Maximize their original thinking. Business-wise, what do they see for themselves? Financial-wise, what do they want? Do they want financial independence, or they just want to live survival? What do they want? Family-wise, what do they want? Social-wise, physical health and fitness. If you don't get up and do that, if you're not empowering your life, people will overpower you. If you don't define it, other people define it. If you don't fill your day with high-priority actions that inspire you, your day will fill up with low-priority distractions that don't. So master planning is designed for people who have maybe never taken the time or given themselves the time to think foresight and plan out what they want and put it down. And some people come there, they're so used to subordinating to other people and living in other people's expectations and setting fantasies for their life that they go, oh, you want to make God laugh, tell him your goals. And they think, oh, I don't want to do that, it's scary, I feel burdened by it. But people that set real goals in real time that are truly authentic according to their highest values, they love setting goals, they love metricing them. If you really love something, you love to metric it. The reason I keep records of it, and I have 4,000 pages of metrics, is because I love matching to make sure when I say something that I get feedback. Am I really committed to it? And if I see evidence of it, I'm certain. If I don't see any evidence of it, I must be lying to myself. Mm-hmm. And it gives me feedback to make sure I set real goals to get things done. And I don't see how you can achieve greatness. I can't imagine the tall building, this new building that's going up here in Sandton. I can't imagine that done without a plan. The great China Wall, the great Giza pyramids, the 7 wonders of the world. I don't know of any of those that weren't planned ahead by a foresight and vision. Hmm. So vision is, those with a vision flourish, those without a vision perish. And your forebrain, your executive center, which has self-governance and mastery, is visionary. And the lower centers are not. They're impulsive and they're tactile and they're emotional. And they don't have the ability. They're reacting. They have short-term immediate gratification and addictive kind of behaviors. Visionary people are patient. They're willing to go through pain and pleasure in the pursuit of it. And they plan out and they mitigate risks and they strategically plan to take away fantasies and get real objectives.
I think I need to implement a bit more of those in my own life. Should we have, well, let me start that again. We each should have our own measurement of success, as you stated the other night. In view of our current statistics, between 1% to 3% of the global population is financially independent or financially free. And that's by a standard norm. Shouldn't financial independence also be measured by, a self-measurement? Or what is financial independence really?
Financial independence is a real factual specific. It's not a nebulous thing. Fulfillment is based on an individual value system, because you don't have to have financial independence to have fulfillment. You can have fulfillment raising beautiful children in a nice little township home. But financial independence is a specific number built out of 10 questions. Number one is exactly what are your current total assets? What's your current total liabilities? What is your current total net worth? Assets minus liabilities. What is the total amount of money that you would love to live on annually, passively, often passive investments? How much do you want to live on per year? Let's say it's 100,000. Well, here it would be a million rand or something. Well, 1.2 million rand, I think. Okay, let's say it's 1.2 million. That's a specific number. If you don't have a specific number of what you want to live on, it's nebulous. You don't have anything to shoot for. Once you know that, then you ask the question, what is the average interest rate? With all my knowledge of learning, finances, what's the average interest rate I can earn passively off my investments? Average. Say 6%. What's the average inflation rate over 100 years so I can get a realistic expectation of what inflation is going to do against it? Okay, let's say 5%. What is the total amount that I must have as a total net worth right now, earning 6%, that will give me 100,000 or 1.2 million rand? And then on top of that, I got to add 5% on top of that to factor in inflation. And whatever that amount is, if it earns 6%, it'll now give me that for the rest of my life, factoring in inflation. Now, the question is what's the shortfall between my current net worth and that? And then what's my strategy on getting that difference? And then if you do, most people are overwhelmed by that. They're just blown away by that because they go, there's no way I can do that.
Because it's usually such a huge number.
It's too overwhelming, most people. So then you have to come up with what is called an accelerated savings or investment technique. You start out smaller, and you just, as you learn and you get more proficient, you expand it. And you learn how to run your business more efficiently, and you learn how to save more, and you do it over time. And you do an accelerated growth. So for a while, you're below that need. And then above it, you're later above that amount, so you can at least average that amount over a period of time that's reasonable. These are real numbers that are real objectives, that are real goals, that people that get really financially independent follow. So fantasies and nebulous things, I hope it's going to happen, and fantasy, not going to happen. 99% of the people, if I ask people how many want to be financially independent, every hand will go up. If I ask how many are, the hands will go down. I had 5,000 people one time in a talk. 7 people had their hand up that were financially independent. Very few people. It's less than 1% worldwide. In fact, globally, a decamillionaire is 0.213% globally. So when I saw that, I realized that all these people have fantasies about being wealthy, but they don't have a strategy. They don't have any plans. They don't have any clarity. They don't even know what it is. If they don't know those 10 things I just mentioned, they're guaranteed not to ever get financially independent. They have to have those in place. They have to be a clear objective, a clear strategy, a clear action step, a clear understanding of the math of that. Otherwise, they're just praying and hoping that it's going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that a person might not get into a business that's inspiring and it may flourish. But I know people that have big businesses and still have no financial independence because they keep spending it on lifestyle. Because the hierarchy of their values will determine what they do with their money. And if they don't have a value on wealth building, then they keep spending it. They just raise their lifestyle and keep in debt. They have big homes, but no money, no savings. So that means that they're actively engaged in making money, and there's no problem with that. There's nothing wrong, no moral issue. But they won't have financial independence where their passive income is now exceeding their active income. I didn't have that until age 28. 28, I realized I did this exercise with all those 10 questions, and I realized, you know what? I'm great at saving money for things, but not actually investing money where it's working for me. So I don't want to be a slave to money all my life. I want it working for me. So that's when I had a shift in values. That's when I ran those numbers. I looked at what I needed to do. I put my strategy in place. I put my head to the ground, and I went and did it.
You say you did that when you were 28. Is there ever a time that it's too late to do it?
Well, if you're 20 years old, if you saved 10% of whatever you earned, you could potentially get independent by, say, 65. If you're 30 years old, if you saved 20%, you could do it. 40 years old, 30% of what you earned. 50 years old, 40%. 60 years old, 50%. The longer you wait, the more difficult it is, the more you have to put energy into it. But you can, there's no limit on the income a person can make and the way they manage it, except their own value system, because there's no limit on the income you make. You can go out and serve people. If you serve people more effectively, more efficiently, and serve and do something that serves vast numbers of people, you have vast income potential. But if you do something that's limited and you're focusing on yourself and not caring about humanity and serving needs, there's no income. There's no way you're going to get wealthy without being dedicated to serving people, learning how to manage money wisely, and valuing yourself enough to save it.
Time is almost up. That's my 5-minute warning. Last question. Whilst I was researching and studying one of your students, and I believe he is your friend now, I was privileged to a budget structure that's totally different to what I was taught in all my financial education. Um, Taking Parkinson's law into account, why is this budget structure more effective than the normal income versus expenses?
Well, you have to explain to me what the budget structure is.
The budget structure, as Brian explained it, was you break your entire budget up into 10% for your uh, future investments or retirement, 10% for your financial freedom, 10% for education, 50 or 55% for your necessity account, your 10% for charity, 10% for play, and then your 5% or 10% for no, 5 or 10% is for charity, and it's your 10% for your play account. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if that's my promotion, what that is. That's why I need to ask you what that was. I believe that the budgeting count needs to be based on the individual person's values. Because some people are interested in doing charity and some people are not. Some people are interested in playing, some people are not. It needs to be based on their value structure, first of all. If they want financial independence, at least a portion, and hopefully an ever progressive portion of the amount needs to be saved. Because a person saving 1 to 3% is never going to get financially independent. This math will never allow it, unless they lower their lifestyles drastically. So there has to be a minimum, and 10% really doesn't cut it for most people. And if you're 20 years old, it might, but if you're 30 or 40, you never get there with 10%. You'll have a freedom in a sense, but you'll have to downgrade your life most of the time. So you have to stop and ask what you really want, and you have to structure it based on what your real values are, because you won't follow it anyway unless it's your real values. And you need to pay your taxes. You need to pay your savings and investments. You need to have, if you do want to do something spiritual or charitable, then you need to acknowledge that's important to me. You need to set what that amount is. It's based on that person's values. I know people that put in, I met a woman that I consulted with that had a goal of 100 million US dollars into a church. And she had 60 million set aside, and she wanted to get 120, so she had 20 for herself and 100 for the church. So she was working towards that goal before she hit 62 years old, and she was on track. But there are other people that says, I'd like to do something for an education and help schools, and I want to do education for townships. The values of the person need to be based on that. The allocations, you definitely need a savings account. I call it an immortal savings. This is money you don't ever spend. It goes into investments. You need a cushion account for in case there is a really emergency, so your mind's not volatile and you're staying focused. You need to have your tax account because you need to have you pay your taxes. You need to contribute back to society that way at least. Then you need your depreciation account. Everything that depreciates and all the things you own are going to go down. You're going to have to replace it. You need to have prepared in increments instead of waiting for an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to have if you do vacation, my life's a vacation, but if you need a vacation, you need to put a vacation account. If you know you want to do education, you need an education account. If you know you want to do charity, you need a charity account. It's based on what your values are. And I'm not going to make it right or wrong about what that is. And the ratios, I can't say are absolute, other than the savings for financial independence. Those have a minimum amount to achieve. The rest of them are based on what you want. So if you want to do education and you only want to spend 5,000 rands a month on it, then that's all you put aside. But if you are doing a heavy education, I mean, I do travel. I spend $1 million US a year just on travel. Other people, they want to put 5,000 a year on travel. So it depends on the values. You structure it. But if you don't structure it, there's chaos. And money circulates through the economy from those who value it least to those who value it most. And it circulates from those who have the least order around it to those who have the most order around it. And if you don't structure it and bring order to it, why would money go to you when you don't know how to manage it? It goes to people who know how to manage it. That's why the wealthy get wealthier and the poor usually get poorer. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to manage it. If you do an inventory and a value determination process on people that have no money, you'll see their values are leading them there. And you see people that have money, values are leading them there. Their values are dictating their financial destiny. So the values are going to determine how it's allocated, and the allocation needs to be congruent with what's true for them, and it has to be real and grounded about the outcomes they want. So if they say they want to be financially independent, there's a math to it. If those 10 questions have to be in place, are they on track for it? Otherwise, it's fantasy. So it's not just exactly what he meant, the exact numbers. It's based on the individual.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time and allowing me to this great opportunity to interview you. Do you have just a parting thought for all the listeners out there? Building up for their financial independence. What's the one thing that you would recommend them that they do?
There's a thing in thermodynamics, the principles of thermodynamics, called entropy. And entropy is the tendency to go from order to disorder. And financial independence will never be obtained if you have no order to counterbalance disorder. So you have to make a commitment that you're going to pay whatever you make, you're going to put a portion of that into savings, and then eventually into investment. It's going to stair step from savings to investment. You need to save before you invest, before you ever speculate. So you have to make a commitment to yourself that I'm worth it, that my objectives are worth it, my contribution that I want to make to the world is worth it, and I'm going to save a portion of what I earn. No matter what it is, I'm going to save a portion of it. A minimum amount or a percentage, whatever's greater, and you commit to it, and you do it electronically so you can't emotionalize it. Emotions destroy wealth, electronics build it. So you'll automatically electronically take it out of your bank account and you stick it in your investment account every single month like clockwork, or every 2 weeks or every week, however you can do it. The more frequent, the better, because smaller increments are easier to do than large ones. And you make a commitment to do it, and it's never touched. You're not allowed to touch it. It no longer exists. It's now only there to grow for the objectives that you have. You can't rob it. You can't steal from it. It's there. It's like a baby. You don't want to take an arm off a baby. It's your baby, your financial baby. You don't go, oh, I like to grow it, but I borrow your arm or leg back. You let it grow. And then you keep increasing it and try to increase that. I tell people every quarter, once you've been comfortable and proven you can do what you can do, you can push it just a little bit more. And you keep pushing it, and that forces you to become more efficient at work or in business or managing money. And you'll find that once you manage money wisely, you'll attract more money to manage. You'll attract people and opportunities and all kinds of things to come in that gives you more opportunity to make more income. So don't wait for more money to come into you, because it will never come. It never comes because entropy takes away money that's not organized up at front. You structure it, you force it into savings, you make it happen, it becomes automated. You don't think about it anymore, it becomes an automatic thing, and all of a sudden you're gradually growing your wealth. And once you do, it starts to have a life of its own. You then go study it. If you really value wealth building, you're going to study it. You're going to have mentors, you're going to have people that hold you accountable, you're going to be reading about it, learning about it, knowing what to do with it, so you become more effective and efficiently at placing it and allocating it so it's working for you more efficiently than before. So if you're not growing every single month and showing that you're making progress, you really aren't demonstrating you care about building wealth. So it doesn't matter how much you start with. I had a guy, believe it or not, that started with a quarter, a U.S. quarter, which is about
25 cents.
22 cents. 2 cents. Well, it's 300 Rand or so. A quarter, no, 30 Rand. There's a quarter, that's it. That's all he saved. Within a year, it was $1.80. Now you think, well, that's going to take forever. In 5 years, it was $2,000 a month.
Because it kept on growing.
He kept growing, never stopped. $2,000 a month. In 10 years, it was $17,000 a month. So here's a guy that started out. I always say piggy banks become piggy banks. Little actions make big dreams. He didn't think he'd ever do that. He never imagined he could ever save that kind of money. But he kept doing that, and he kept valuing himself, and he kept going out and trying a way of serving people. Because if you don't serve people, there's no income. He kept looking at how can I serve humanity? What can I do to serve humanity? What can I do? What's talents so I can broker indirectly or directly as a talent do for somebody that can help people? He cared about humanity because wealth comes from caring about humanity, caring about what needs are and finding a way of solving needs. That's where money comes from.
Brilliant. Dr. Demartini, it was absolutely a pleasure talking to you. And I definitely look forward to your next breakthrough experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the interview.
Thanks a lot.